We walk around every single day, completely oblivious. But have you ever really stopped to think about the world you walk over? There's this entire hidden realm of tunnels, rooms, and forgotten history just lying dormant a few feet beneath the surface.
So what's the deal? What's actually hiding down there in the dark? What secrets are locked away? Well, that's what we're going to dive into today.
And believe it or not, we're not the only ones asking these questions. It turns out there's a whole group of people, a whole society even, who are dedicated to finding the answers.
Our guide for this whole exploration is this awesome newsletter from 1999. It's from a group with a fantastic name, Subterranea Britannica. And these folks, well, they're all about studying anything and everything that humans have built and used underground.
Now, these guys aren't just interested in any old sewer pipe. No, their real passion is for the forgotten stuff, the abandoned and forgotten structures. We're talking declassified Cold War bunkers, ancient tunnels, industrial sites that have just been, well, left behind by history.
All right, let's start our journey down. Think about it. What's the most basic, the most primal reason people would ever start digging into the ground? It all comes down to one thing, right? Survival.
So in northern France, they've got this amazing word for these places, a mush. It's an old dialect word, and it literally means hiding place. But listen, we are not just talking about some little root cellar here. Oh no. Back in the 15th and 16th centuries, when armies were just constantly marching through, entire villages would build these massive underground communities to just disappear.
And how they built them is just incredible. It was a real community project. They dig this huge central tunnel, and then each family would branch off and carve out their own set of rooms. They even carved out spaces for their animals, their most valuable possessions. Once they hit the entrances, boom, the whole village could just vanish off the map for days on end.
And this is such a perfect way to see how that need for survival has changed over time, right? On one side, you've got the muche, dug by hand by the community to save their families and their cows. And on the other side, a 20th century government citadel, a high-tech fortress of steel and concrete built to protect the government itself. So the threats get more sophisticated, I guess, but the basic solution is exactly the same. When things get bad, you go down.
Okay, let's go a level deeper. We're moving past wartime shelters now and into something else. The hidden, forgotten guts of our industrial past. It's like this mechanical ghost just sleeping right under our cities. I mean, just take a look at this list for London. And this is just the stuff that's at risk. It's not all military. You've got old tram subways, ice houses from the 1800s for storing food, ancient wells. Every single one is a piece of history. They're like fossils, really. The fossil record of a city. The old machinery that made everything work, just quietly rotting away where no one can see it.
And to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, what do you think this number is? 441. That is the number of well sites that have been found and cataloged in just the Brighton area alone. 441. Powering everything from breweries to laundromats, it was this massive, invisible network, kind of the lifeblood of the city, long before we had the huge central water systems we have now.
Okay, but some secrets are definitely bigger than others. Now we're going down to what you could call a secret level. Something truly incredible, hidden right in the heart of London, while millions of people just walked right over it, with no idea it was even there. So the war ends, it's 1946, and the Times newspaper drops this bombshell of a story. Turns out there was a massive, top-secret fortress operating right under Westminster, and its job? To house the entire war cabinet if the country was ever invaded. Wild.
And get this, the specs on this place are just mind-blowing. It was completely bomb-proof and gas-proof. It had its own power, its own water. We're talking 3 miles of hallways, almost 1,000 rooms, all protected by a shell of steel and concrete that was 12 feet thick. It could literally seal itself off from the rest of the world for 3 weeks straight. It was basically an invisible, untouchable city.
Okay, so we've been talking about all this from, a historical perspective, but what does it actually feel like to go down into one of these places? Well, let's jump into a first-hand account. This is from a guy who went down into a lead mine in Derbyshire, way back in 1932.
The writer's name is S.P.B. Mays, and he paints a great picture. He says he, with reluctance, put on a cap and overalls. They handed him a lamp, and then he was basically shoved into this cage to head down into the darkness.
And yeah, he pretty quickly figures out why they made him wear that cap. He sees a light in the distance and thinks he has more room than he does, and bam! Smashes his head right on the ceiling. It's a real reminder that this is a dangerous physical place.
And the sensory overload is just intense. The sound of the drills is deafening. And then there's this smell. He says it wasn't pleasant or unpleasant, just odd, musty. The smell of the deep earth, I guess.
But even with all that, you can tell Mize is just completely thrilled by the experience. So much so that he ends his article by telling everyone, hey, you should go explore these mines yourself. Which is pretty funny because the newsletter editor had to add a little note right after it that just says, please don't. Probably a good call.
So, as we come back up to the surface, you have to ask, what do we call all this stuff, really? These bunkers, these wells, these muchas? Well, there's actually a name for it. Underground built heritage. And that's a really important idea. It treats these places not just as holes in the ground, but as a crucial and usually forgotten part of our shared history.
And that really leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? We tend to think history is something you find in a book or behind glass in a museum. But so much of it is actually written down there, in stone and concrete, right under our feet. It really makes you wonder, what other stories have we forgotten just because it's out of sight?